So our first progression we are going to go through is some body weight jumps. So of course you make sure the athlete can do a body weight squat and a body weight lunge before you go to this. We did both of those exercises last session, so you can look back to that session to see the proper form, and we'll go further into explanation here in the jumping. So the first thing I'm going to have her do is a jump squat. So she's going to start feet shoulder width apart, arms are going to start all the way up. We're going to come down and she's going to jump up and land back in that squat, arms back, core is nice and tight, back is nice and flat. So we'll have her demonstrate a couple reps for you here. Good. So down and whip those arms back. Good. And back up. So notice how when she jumps, her arms, when she goes down, and then when she goes up, her arms go up with her. So do a couple right in a row. Good. Perfect. And you can relax. So a lot of athletes, sometimes when they jump, they tend to do this. They'll go here, and then their arms will go back when they go up. But if you think about it, that's counterproductive. When you go up, you want your arms to go up so you can get as high as possible, especially when you are working with goalkeepers, because generally when they are jumping up, they are going to get the ball, and of course your arms are going to go with you. So make sure when you guys are doing jump squats that you have your athletes, or if you are the athlete, you are using your arms going up when you go up. So the next progression that we will go to will be a unilateral movement, will be jumping lunges. So same idea as before. She's going to start with one leg, opposite arm, opposite leg here, jump up and switch. The arm goes with it, jump straight up, keeping that chest nice and high, and she wants to make sure that that back leg is about 90 degrees. Go ahead, do a couple reps. Good. Perfect. Good, and relax. So I'm gonna have you do it from the side this time. What I really want you to watch is her front leg, and how her front leg is at about 90 degrees and her toe is not going, her knee is not going over her toe. Good. And notice also how her front foot is nice and flat on the ground. She's not having the weight on her toes, and you can relax. So after we do that, and you go from your bilateral movement to your unilateral movement, you combine them together. So what we're gonna do is 2 lunges, 1, 2, jump squat. Lunges into our jump squat. So you have the athlete go from one to the other, make sure they can do both with good form and good technique. And then you can add them together for some advanced athletes and to switch it up and make it a little bit more fun. So we'll start with 2 lunges into 1 jump squat. Good. And jump squat and up. Good. And then lunge. Good. And go right into those lunges. Yes, perfect. Good. And the last one, finish with that jump squat. Good. And relax. Perfect. So as you notice, it took a little bit to get used to, a little bit more explanation from me on my part, and you're going to notice that with your athletes. So sometimes you might explain something, or you might say something or demonstrate it, and you might forget to say something because you know what you mean and you know what you want. But then as you have your athlete demonstrate, or have one athlete demonstrate for the group, you'll learn that, okay, maybe something wasn't clear. So then you really need to focus on the details and focus on what you want, and make sure that the athletes understand the proper form and proper technique. That way they also get the most out of the exercise, because you don't want to give the athletes something and have them do it halfway, because then you're not getting everything out of it that they could be. So that was our body weight plyo, and we will move on to our next progression now. So our second progression is going to be another body weight movement. It's called bounds. So what she is going to do is bound at a 45-degree angle. So just off onto the side, like if you were making a Y with your arms, that's the angle she's going to be jumping at. So not straight out to the side, not forward, but on a diagonal. And she is going to land on one leg, and then she's going to jump out the other way, land on the other leg, and she's going to stick it between every rep the leg she lands on is going to be nice and bent and controlled. So what we're doing here, we already did some unilateral movements before, after our bilateral movement. Now we are going into single leg jumps and landing, which of course for any athlete, soccer players, especially goalkeepers, do need to be able to land on one leg when they come down from jumps, or if they get hit in the air, anything like that. Any situation can happen where they do need to be able to land on one leg. It also helps when you're going to jump off of one leg and you need to be very explosive going out to get the ball. This will help them be stable and be more explosive in those situations. So she's going to demonstrate a few reps here, sticking each one. Good, one more, and then walk it back. So that was really good on her part. However, one thing I would correct is her arms. So this time she's going to make sure she goes opposite arm, opposite leg, just like we were before in those lunges. And what that's going to do is create more power and more stability and more reps of the proper opposite arm, opposite leg range of motion. Good. And one more, and you can walk it back. So now the athlete is comfortable with that movement and comfortable with sticking it. She looks pretty stable. So now I'm going to challenge her a little bit, and I'm going to ask her to try to go a little bit farther out to the side. So once the athlete is comfortable with the movement, you really want to challenge them in how explosive can they be. Because hopping a few feet apart, that works good on stability, but now you want to challenge them, challenge their muscles to see how much they can explode, and challenge their muscles when they land to be stable. Because in a game, they're going to be much more explosive and not necessarily focusing on their muscles. So you really want them to challenge their muscles now. That way when they go into a game, they're ready to go. Good, a little bit farther. Good, and last one. Good, and walk it back. So I'm gonna have her go one more time. That was definitely, you saw, a little bit more challenging. So when you see your athlete go and kind of wobble, but then go to the next jump, challenge them a little bit, ask them to hold each one for about 2 seconds before they move on. Add a little timed challenge in there and count out loud if you have to, so the athlete knows that they have to stick it before they move on. All right, one more time. Good, 1, 2, go. 1, 2, and go back. Yep, see, there we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Good. So as you can see, some athletes might have a stronger leg than the other. Her right leg was definitely more stable than her left leg, but that's okay. And that's also why we work on single leg or unilateral movements, because you want to know what strengths and weaknesses your athletes have, or which leg is stronger than the other, because we might do a little bit extra work with her left leg in a session, or a little bit more ankle stability stuff in a session. That way, if she has to land on her left leg in a game, I have no doubt that nothing is going to happen to that left leg and she's not going to get injured. So now that we did the jumps and bounds with a stick, now you want her to go continuous. So after that looks pretty good, we're gonna go continuous. So all that's gonna happen is I'm not gonna have her stick it for 2 seconds in between, and she's just gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, still nice and explosive, but making sure they're comfortable with the movement first. So just go continuous first. Good. Good, and walk it back. And now you can try to explode out to the side even farther. Still only 4 reps. Good. Good. Now I want it a little bit quicker. Last one. Good, and explode. Good, and go. Good. So as you saw, as she progressed, her body movement changed a little bit, and she started to go a little bit more forward, then more out to the side, and she started to stick it, and she wasn't really too comfortable with going really quickly. So as you see your athlete progress, you want to make sure you increase that speed and increase the distance that they are going. So here I only had her do a couple reps, but you generally have them do about 4 or 5 on each side. Take a rest in between, probably about 30 seconds, depending on how explosive they're being and what else you're doing in their session, making sure that they're fully rested and make sure that the movement looks the way you want it to look before going on to the next one. So what I did here, I would not do in one complete session. I would do the bounds and sticking it and training that for at least 2 weeks. Then I would move on if it looked okay. So that is the end of our bounds, and we are going to move on to our next progression now. The third progression we are going to do is going to be lateral movements. We're going to start with our push to move, and then we're going to go to a shuffle and add a little bit of resistance to the athlete. So the push to move, we're going to be nice and low in a squat. You're going to go, right now we're going to the right, so you're pushing off the left leg, jumping, exploding, pushing off the left leg, jumping, exploding, and then I'm going to have her go from cone to cone. It's nice to have the athlete have somewhere where they know they're going to, and you really want them to explode and cover as much ground as possible. Now, the most important thing with this is you do not want them reaching. So I don't want the athlete to do this, because then they're gonna land on their heel and hurt their leg. What you want them to do is keep their core nice and tight, keep their body right underneath each other, hips, knees, and ankles are all trying to stay in line with each other, and they're jumping and landing. Everything is still in a nice straight line. Core is nice and tight, and we're nice and stable. So now I'm gonna have her start over here on this orange cone, and she is going to demonstrate. So starting nice and low in our squat, and then she's gonna push and land, good. Push and land, good. Good, and go ahead, relax. So one thing that you might have saw her do is she picked up her leg and then went. You want to try to make sure the athlete goes right from this position and goes. You don't want them to lean and drive. You want to focus on pushing off of this one leg for right now. So same thing on the way back. Better. Good. And one more. Good. And relax. So we're gonna have her go one more time after the athlete gets comfortable with the movement and really understands what you want from them. So I would have her usually do a little bit more reps, but just because I'm demonstrating progressions, we're going at a little faster pace. Now I'm gonna ask her to cover as much ground as possible. So in about a 5-yard area, an athlete should be able to get there in 2 to 3 steps max, usually. If it's a little kid, it's gonna be more than that. But if they're about, I would say, middle school, high school aged and up, 2 to 3 steps should be able to get them there. But again, that's gonna take time to practice. It's not gonna happen immediately. So go into it nice and slow and spend a couple weeks on it once you get there. So now I'm gonna ask her to go as far as she can with each step without reaching and keeping her legs right underneath each other. Good. Yep. Good. And same thing on the way back. Good. Good. And relax. So now you notice that because I challenged her and because I said it should take 2 to 3 steps, she was able to get there in just about 3 steps. Again, we're going at a little bit of a faster pace, so in a couple weeks, if we did that, I have no doubt she'd be able to get there in 3 steps. And it was a little bit more challenging. She was a little bit more wobbly, but that's why you spend a little bit more time in that area focusing on good technique. So the next progression would be with the band. So now that she knows how to do that, you want to add a little bit of resistance, which might happen in a game, so she can still push off and she can still have a lot of explosive power. Step that way just a little bit more, so I'm at the orange cone. Perfect. All right, so you put this right around their waist where it's comfortable for them. It doesn't have to be in any certain spot. All you want to do is create a little bit of resistance. It's not going to be a lot, just to add a little bit extra of a challenge. So she's going to get down in the same position and she's going to do the exact same thing she did before. Good. Good. Perfect. And relax. So notice how she was a little bit more wobbly. You really want to enforce that the athlete keep their core tight, sit their butt back and stay nice and low. feet stay flat. You don't want to see them start to come up and rock on the balls of their feet and their heels come up. You want them to stay nice and low. The lower an athlete is, the more stable they're going to be. So you really want to enforce them keeping their legs bent and their core tight. Same thing on the way back. Good. Feet flat, good. Good. And relax. Perfect. Can you take that off? Thank you. So that is going to be your progression for your push to move, and then you are going to move to your shuffle. So a shuffle is really just a quicker push to move. So now I'm going to have her shuffle from orange cone to orange cone, nice and quick, and I'm not going to give her any further instruction just yet. Just to evaluate how the athlete does it, I'm going to have her shuffle to the orange cone, pause, and back to this orange cone. Good. Good. So some things that I noticed when she did that, she did a pretty good job of keeping her hips, knees, and toes all facing forward. When you ask an athlete to shuffle to the side and back, generally you might see this, with one toe facing this way in the direction they're going, or they'll start to turn their hips a little bit and they won't keep their hips facing forward. You want to make sure that their hips, knees, and toes are all facing forward, especially for a goalkeeper. A lot of times this happens if they're trying to save a PK, they can only move side to side. And the quickest way you're going to move side to side is with proper form and technique. So that she did pretty good on. She stayed on the balls of her feet. However, what happens when you go from push to move to the shuffle, I don't know if you noticed this, but this happens a lot. When you speed things up, everything tends to get a little bit closer. So notice how she took about 4 or 5 shuffles, but when she did push to move, we got her almost to 3. So now I'm going to challenge her to take bigger steps while she's shuffling and see how many steps it takes her to get to the orange cone and back. Good. So not bad, push off even more. So get set, and then I want you to push, even if it's not as quick, I want you to push off as hard as you can. Good, push, push. It's okay, that was better. That's better. So relax, shake them out, and then I want you to go one more time. It takes a minute to get used to. That's better. Big steps. That's better. So notice how she was getting a little caught up with her feet, but she was getting it down. The more reps you have the athlete do, so again, this is just a couple examples of what you would do in a session. The more reps you have an athlete do, the better this will be. And then you will have them doing the shuffling in 3 big steps. But again, 5 yards, this is just an average, this is an exact distance. So it might be a little bit different steps for her as well. And we are only doing a couple reps, quick progressions. So I'm gonna have her do it a couple more times, and I want you to see what you could point out and see what you see gets better. Good. 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 Focus more on pushing off that back leg. Good, and relax. So try to do more of a push to move, but make the push to move quicker. So don't even worry about shuffling. That's better. Push to move, quick, 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 quick. That's better. So sometimes when you talk to an athlete and tell them certain cues, if I tell someone to shuffle, they might only think, okay, it has to be quick. But when you teach them to push to move and you slow it down, she did very well with the push to move. And then when I told her to shuffle, she didn't shuffle bad by any means, but she could have covered more ground. So then when you take it back a step and you tell her, okay, focus on push to move, then she covered more ground again. So what I might do with her is focus more on push to move, Do that for a couple weeks and then slowly just make the push to move quicker. I wouldn't even necessarily with the language say shuffle to her, because in her mind that has a different process and that's a different thing. And also she just learned it. So a couple weeks of push to move, then if you slowly speed it up, if you notice that when you say shuffle or when you say a certain term that the athlete doesn't respond and do what you want, take a step back and go back to what they did good at, and then try to change that and manipulate that into what you want. So after she does the shuffle, you will add the resistance band to the shuffle. So around the hips again. So same idea as before, she's gonna go there and back. However, I am going to stay on the same side now. And back. Good. And one more time. Good, and back. Good. And relax. So notice that I did it a little bit different than before. So when she was going this way, it's the same way as the push to move what we did. I was resisting her going this way. So that's one way you can do it. Another way you can do it is doing what I did on the way back, which is pulling her in the direction she's going. So that is what we call overtraining, and that is going to help her get more distance. So when she leaves the ground, I'm pulling her extra in that direction. So don't do all of this in one session. I would first add the resistance this way, do a little bit with that, a week or 2 weeks of that, get them used to that. Then I would go and see how they do it on their own again, see how much we progressed, how much distance they're covering with each step. Then I would go to the overtraining aspect and pulling them towards you, trying to get them to gain more ground. So I'm actually gonna have her do a couple more reps of the resisted, and then I'll do a couple more reps of the overtraining so you could see a little bit more. Sorry. All right, so we'll do just there, and then I'm gonna resist you on the way back. Good. Good. And now I'm gonna pull you this way. And another way. Okay. Good. And relax. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so that is our third progression of body weight movements, adding a little bit of resistance, and now we are going to move on to our fourth plyo and explosive progression.